record button? Good. Okay, I want to welcome everybody. Let's see, just for the record, today is April the 5th, 2026, and we have the great good fortune of having Zenchin Florence Caplow with us today. Zenchin is Dharma transmitted Soto Zen priest, and she was ordained by Norman Fisher in 2007, and then received Dharma transmission from Bruce Fortin in 2022. She's been practicing Vipassana and Zen for about 40 years, doing sessions and practice periods and residence at San Francisco Zen Center practice centers. She's a Dharma teacher. She's a Unitarian Universalist minister, an essayist, a botanist, a change coach, and the co-editor of a book with Susan Moon titled The Hidden Lamp, Stories from 25 Centuries of Awakened Women. And then her most recent book is Tend to Your Spirit, Mindful Living with Chronic Illness. And she currently lives and works in Port Angeles, Washington. And if you want to learn more about her work, you can go to her website, which is cloudway.live, I guess, dot. At any rate, it's so wonderful that you agreed to come and talk to us, Florence. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Kirk. You didn't mention that you and I have known each other for a pretty long time now, too.
Yes.
We were in what was called the SPOT training.
Yeah,
Shogaku Priest Orientation Training, I think it was, in, gosh, what was that? Maybe 2006 to 2008, something like nine.
Yeah.
And we connected very much at that time, and we've been friends ever since. There's other old friends on in this Zoom room as well. But it's been sweet to sometimes come and speak with you all here at Sellwood. I'm now back in the Pacific Northwest. You might remember that I was coming to you from Illinois, I think, for most of the other times. But now I'm in Port Angeles. I'm just north of you. I'm actually facing south, so I'll kind of bow in your direction. And it's great to be with you again. And so talking with Kirk, we were trying to think about what might be helpful or interesting to all of you. And my newest book did just come out in October, and it seemed like it might make sense to talk about illness and Zen practice. So that's what we're going to do. And if by any chance you're one of the lucky people without some kind of chronic illness or pain, well, this is relevant for you because we're all in human bodies. We will all have some form of chronic illness, pain, or disability at some point in our lives. And we also
hear you.
They
cannot hear you. I know.
Okay. Oh, looks like somebody just unmuted and muted. So I'm just very aware that in some ways, there's nothing particularly radical about this teaching. It's what the Buddha taught throughout his whole life. And I'll be talking about that a little later. So I want to start with a little Northwest story that maybe will sound like a complete non sequitur, but it is relevant. I came back about a year ago, and in the fall, an old friend came down from Bellingham. I'm out on the Olympic Peninsula, and we went to the Solduck River, which is one of the places that you can watch the salmon come up the river and leap up the falls. Not the big falls on the Solduck, but another series of cascades. And I'd never been to that particular spot, and we walked in through the old growth forest to the edge of the river. And there were quite a few people there, and there was a huge pool down below us with all of these really big salmon, all pointed upstream. And they had a series of pretty good sized falls that they had to jump up into a higher, smaller pool and then up again. And every once in a while, you'd see one kind of get in position. They were all kind of in position because there they were facing upstream. But one would get in position and then attempt the leap, right? And we were all right there with that salmon. there was complete silence on the banks of the river. It was kind of amazing. And then one would make it up, and it was impossible not to cheer for the salmon that had made it up to that point. And sometimes they even made it up and then slipped back down. And so I found this a really moving example, non-human example of a certain quality that is really important, two qualities actually that are really important in our Dharma practice. And I'll give you the Sanskrit words and then also the more or less English translation. So one is virya, and virya is usually translated as determination or joyful effort, various translations of that. And the other is a little bit less well-known word, which is shraddha, which means faith. And as we know, the salmon, it's just incredible what they do. The whole thing is amazing, right? Because they've been gone from the place that they came out of their eggs years before. They've been out in the ocean. And they're actually smelling their way home. They can smell the particular river that they came from. And they almost always get it right. And then they follow that river upstream, really no matter what. Even if it means even if they don't make it, they just keep going. They just, until they've gone as far as they can, or they get to the place that they will mate and lay eggs. Lay eggs and mate is actually how it works with fish. And then the next generation will be born. And of course, they die there and are part of nourishing the forest where they have traveled back to their home forest. So maybe part of the reason it really moved me this time is that I've come back to the place that I feel most deeply at home too, and it took a lot to get back here. So I really connected with it. But also I had actually been teaching. I do a lot of teaching at Upaya Zen Center online, and I'd been teaching the paramitas, the sometimes translated as perfections or great practices is kind of one way I like to think of them. And virya, this element of our effort, no matter what, really was a big part of what we studied during that year. So now I'll get back to my story and talk about also lead into tend to your spirit. So what I wanted to talk about is my own journey up the river of practice and how chronic illness has shaped that journey and how I've had to be creative and how actually in many ways it's deepened both my determination and my faith to keep practicing regardless of my circumstances. And right now I just have to stop and honor Kirk's original teacher, Darlene Cohen, because Darlene, although she was never formally my teacher, how many people here have ever heard of Darlene Cohen? Just raise your hand if you know about Darlene. Oh, I get to introduce you to her. That's wonderful. Looked like maybe a third to half of you knew who Darlene was, but others not. So Darlene was a early resident of San Francisco Zen Center, a wild woman by all accounts, including her own. And when she was in her early 30s and had a young child, she was living in San Francisco as a resident of San Francisco Zen Center, and she had a baby. She had a young child. And one day she woke up and she was in excruciating pain with rheumatoid arthritis. This is the 1970s when there weren't very good drugs for rheumatoid arthritis. And so it took her to the ground for quite a long time. She really couldn't do anything. She writes about this. And then over time, she began, of course, it was profoundly derailing for her, as you might imagine, as a relative young adult, really healthy, vigorous, wild. The story is, I think that she's one of the people anyway who came riding into Zen Center on a motorcycle or in the back of a motorcycle. So this is a big shock. But she kept practicing through all of the challenges of severe chronic illness and pain, and that became her teaching. And I was lucky enough a few years before the spot training in the late 90s to do a workshop with her about practicing with pain. And ironically, it was just a few weeks before my first entry into chronic illness and pain. And so I've been grateful ever since that day that I just happened to take this workshop at San Francisco's City Center with Darlene Cohen right at the time where I received the teachings that I would then put into practice over many, many years. So when I was also in my mid 30s, I I got it's kind of standard sort of story. Often in terms of autoimmune illness, I got a really bad case of mono, and it started to cause a lot of problems in my body. It continues to cause a lot of problems in my body, including development of several different autoimmune illnesses. If any of you have autoimmune illness, you probably know that we tend to collect them. So you get one, and then you get another, and then maybe you get a minor one, and then you get a major one. And so that happened to me also as a very, very serious student of the Dharma. I loved the Dharma. I do love the Dharma still with all my might. And I had actually just done one practice period at Tassajara, and I was going back into another practice period. And then I became very, very ill without knowing in the beginning really what was wrong. And in fact, I had to leave my second practice period at Tassajara because of this, because I couldn't function. I couldn't actually do the formal practice. So in many ways, and that early form of autoimmune illness was episodic. So sometimes I was in great shape, and sometimes I was not at all in good shape, and I was in a lot of pain. And actually, intensive Zen practice, because it was really too much for me physically, was something that could trigger a relapse with this. And so one of the things that happened especially the first few years, is that I had to realize that here I was, this passionate Soto Zen practitioner, and I couldn't actually sit formally. I could do morning zazen, whatever, but I couldn't be on retreat. I couldn't do sesshin. And that had been such an important part of my life. I couldn't do a practice period. So how do you keep practicing when the river is blocked by big boulders? One of my favorite expressions, I don't remember where I heard it, but I love it, is what's in the way is the way. And this was what appeared to be in my way, was how do I keep doing this practice when my body is not strong and when I'm in such pain. And but I was determined that because I had seen what it looked like with Darlene, that you just keep going, you just keep practicing, you get really, really creative about your life and about your practice and how to live both. And one of the things that I do, a lot of the teaching I do these days, I work with two different groups through San Francisco Zen Center. And they're both called Dancing in the Dark Fields, which is an essay that I had written years ago about chronic illness. And they're online programs for people with chronic pain and illness. So maybe afterwards I'll put the link in the chat. So there's a kind of 6-week intensive and then an ongoing group. And the thing that I always say, the thing that was most important to me about Darlene's teaching that I try to carry on, is love the life you have, not the life that you had or the life that you wish you had, but this life, whatever it looks like. And I'll just add that we can practice with the life we have, whatever it is, whatever its challenges. And once you really grasp that, there's really nothing that stops you from going up the river like the salmon. So with that, let me look at my notes here. I've just been riffing. So just just to say, sometimes I remember when we were studying this Virya question, this joyful effort, there were actually some people who have been in my chronic pain and illness groups who were like, but I can't practice Virya. I don't have any energy. I have severe fatigue. What do you mean? What is all this energy thing? It just makes me feel bad. And I think it's so important to understand that this quality is not about physical energy. Zen, in many ways, is a very physical practice, and we can think that it has to look a certain way in order for us to practice, but it doesn't. This quality is inner. So it might take an outer form. I mean, I was the kind of Zen student who would sit all night long on the last night of sesshin. That's the outer form, right? Looked pretty impressive. But maybe as a person with chronic illness, I remember there's a quote that's actually in Tend to Your Spirit that, maybe today for you, getting out of bed is as impressive as a person climbing Mount Everest. So we can't judge from the outside what is virya. It takes tremendous courage and energy to live a creative energy to live a life with chronic illness and pain. So, and I want to say a little bit too about Shraddha, about faith. So it's considered one of the, there's lots of lists, of course, especially in traditional Theravadan Buddhism. The six paramitas, there are five powers, in case you didn't know. One of them is this Shraddha, faith, which might seem like a very surprising word. Oh, by the way, happy Easter, if that's something that you celebrate. But we don't think of faith much in a Buddhist context, although I feel like it's really fundamental for me. But this isn't faith in some divine figure, like in the Judeo-Christian religions. I feel like for us, faith is about these sorts of questions. Do I have faith in my capacity to practice and to keep going? Do I have some faith in the teachings themselves, even if I don't, and I won't fully understand them? And that if we have that, that can give us a kind of unwavering determination, a quality of not giving up no matter what, despite all the ups and downs of our life. And we all have ups and downs, and to really practice. So another way that you could think of faith is confidence. We don't have to know where we're going to have confidence. We just have to have confidence that there's something really good here. There's something that is life affirming and life giving. So sometimes when I'm giving a talk, I always say, well, it's good to have if you're giving a Zen talk, it's good to talk about a koan. So I'll just share a little koan for you that has been important to me. This is from the Blue Cliff Record, and it's case 87. Yunmen said to the assembly, medicine and sickness cure each other. The whole earth is medicine. The whole earth is medicine. What is the self? And there's actually in the commentary, it's very interesting. There's another little story. One day, Manjushri ordered Sudama to pick medicinal herbs. He said, if there is something that is not medicine, bring it to me. Sudama searched all over, but there was not one thing that was not medicine. So we can live our lives that way, everything as medicine. So, and I just have to say that I just finished yesterday teaching one series and I've been doing it for 4.5 years now, the Dancing in the Dark Fields. And it's always very moving, especially at the end, to hear people talk about what they're taking from it. And there's so much wisdom. I think one of the things that happens when you're living a life of, for some people, really extreme challenge is that it calls forth also really great wisdom. And so I'm sure many of you know the four Bodhisattva vows. And of course, one of them is various translations, but Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. So the life of living in a human body is one of the Dharma gates, and all its many changes are Dharma gates. So can we enter those gates? Can we say yes to those gates? And I'll just this is a little quote from Darlene. The world that opened to me through engaging the physical suffering and mental anguish caused by my disease has turned out to be inexpressibly rich. Because if we can engage with our suffering, connect with it, dance with it, tease it, coax it, curse it, as well as trying to change it, just consider it our lives, experience it as our lives, the only lives we have, it changes the quality of that suffering. It's not just our suffering, it's everything. So, just in the last few minutes, I'll say a little bit about the book because I'm really happy with this book. So, this is the book. It's called Tend to Your Spirit. It's a really pretty cover. As a botanist, I particularly appreciate this cover, and it's really based. My part of it was co-written with another Unitarian Universalist minister. In 2021, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I said that people do collect these, so I have more even in common with Darlene than I did. And so did my friend who this book was written with, Julie Lepp. And she approached me about doing a book together. She knew that I had been actually leading these classes for a while. And so we worked on it together. And it's based on the seasons. So both of us feel a really strong connection to the natural world. So it starts with fall, and each of the seasons has four chapters that are the emotional and spiritual challenges, really, and also gifts that come from a life marked by chronic illness, chronic physical challenge. So grief and pain and anger, and also compassion and knowing that you're enough and play and letting go. And so each chapter has essays that we wrote, personal essays, interviews with people who have dealt with chronic illness, who have very different life stories and very different kinds of illnesses than we have. Excerpts, including quite a bit from Darlene's book, Turning Suffering Inside Out, poetry, spiritual practices, journaling practices. And it was a really extraordinary thing to pull this together as a kind of companion because I certainly felt, again, if there hadn't been for Darlene, I think I would have just felt completely at sea. I was at sea anyway, but I would have felt even more at sea without some idea that there was a way to practice with this. And so we wanted to write a book that would give people who might never come anywhere near Buddhism, but a sense that they too can practice. And the biggest compliment I think I've gotten about the book is a friend of mine who you would recognize her name. She's a Buddhist writer, and she went through a very, very, very difficult time in the last year. And I didn't know what she was going through for quite a while, and she didn't know about the book. And then I found out what was happening for her, and I sent her the book. And she said to me after getting it, "Oh my goodness, I realized that I wasn't crazy, what I was going through." Was recovering from a stroke, actually. I wasn't crazy. All the intense feelings that I had, I wasn't crazy. So I love to think that, this book might help people feel like, if nothing else, like they're not crazy if they're going through a lot inside as well as with whatever it is that is the challenge. So I think I'll stop there and I can talk more about the book, in Q&A, but I want to give us a chance to sit together too. So, does that sound good?
Great. Thank you, Florence. Beautiful.